Hello. In this video, we will take a look at how do we use the environment variable in PowerShell. Now, before we get started, let us understand the difference between a local variable and the environment variable. When we talk about the local variable, the scope is very limited to the PowerShell session, whereas the scope of the environment variable is global at the operating system level. Variable and its value, if it's a local variable, is not accessible outside of the PowerShell session, whereas environment variable and its value is accessible outside of the PowerShell session. Other PowerShell or any other program, when it comes to local variable, cannot use that if you are working with any other program or any other code. Whereas other PowerShell or any other program or code can use the environment variable. Local variables are not suitable when you would like to store a value at the system level, whereas if you would like to store a value at the system level, environment variable is suitable. Since local variable of course is local and does not belong to any drive. Environment variable is global and is available as a virtual drive env which is environment colon. Alright. Now, before we get started with environment variables in PowerShell, let's take a look where do we find these environment variables in Windows OS. So, in the search bar, you go ahead and write environment variable. You can see edit the system environment variables. Click on open. This will open up system properties, and in the advanced tab, you will find environment variables. Let's click on that. And you can see there are the environment variables, user variables, as well as the system variables, right? So these are specific to the user variables and these are all related to the system. So we can create the environment variable user specific from here as well. And you can see it's the key and value pair. So you need to define a variable name, a variable value, and you can also go ahead and create a new system variable as well. So when you create, it gives you a similar pop-up to define a key and value pair as a system variable. System variable are more related to the system. So you can see it's more on the processor level, username, Windows directory, operating system, and so on. Okay, so let's go ahead and now deep dive into the environment variable. So let's fire up the PowerShell. So first, let's take a look at how do we get a list of all the environment variables and their values in PowerShell. So to do that, all we need to write is get child item, then we'll specify the path, and then we'll have to specify the directory. So the directory in this case is environment env. Okay, so let's hit run, and as we can see, we get the name and value of all the environment variables, and we see the user environment variable as well as the system environment variables, right? If you would like to get a very specific environment variable, all you need to do is just put a colon slash, and then you will see the list of all the environment variables also in the IntelliSense. So it really becomes easy to pick up and then work with it. So let's say I'm just going to go with computer name, hit run, and you will see my computer name and the value. So this is how you can get a value of the individual environment variable. Now there are certain environment variable that may hold multiple values separated by the semicolon. So for an example, if we take a look at PS, let's go with this, let's say PS module path, let's hit run. So as you can see, this value has multiple values which is separated by a semicolon. So if you would like to split them and get the individual results, what we can do, we can store the value first into the, we'll call it as a PL module path as a variable, and then let's just define it as a variable, and then let's use this PS module path, access the value, and then let's just put a split and then split with a semicolon. All right, so let's go ahead, hit run, and as you can see, the values which were there in the PS module path, which we had 4 values, now we are getting this individually as well. Now let's say we would like to set a value of the environment variable. At the same time, we want to create the environment variable and set the value of the environment variable. How do we do that? So to do that, let's use env variable colon. Let's define a variable called Bing URL, and let's give a value .bing.com. All right, so let's go ahead, click on save, hit run, and as we can see, there's no error. So what that means is we have been able to add a new environment variable and also set the value. So let's verify this. Get child item path environment drive. Let's get rid of the first line. Let's hit run, and let's look for our environment variable, and there you can see we have Bing URL which we just added. Okay, let's close this PowerShell session and let's reopen it to see whether this value really persists or not. Let's close. Let's reopen the PowerShell. And let's use get child item path and the environment drive. Let's go ahead and hit run and look for a Bing URL, and as you can see, the Bing URL does not exist. So what that means is it's not persistent. How do we make it actually persistent? For that, we first need to make sure that whenever any session is launched with the current user, it actually instantiates the environment variable and sets the value. So how do we do that? Let's first get rid of this line. Let's remove that, and we'll use add content. Where we would like to add a content, we would like to add a content into the profile, which is the profile of the current user. Dot current user all hosts. That means all the sessions of the PowerShell it's fetching, and then there we want to set a value of the environment variable. So our environment variable, the way we will refer is env colon Bing URL, that's the name of our environment variable, equals to double quote w.bing.com double quote over single quote over. All right, let's go ahead and hit run. As we can see, we haven't got the error, so this should have now been persisted, and for every session we will now have a Bing URL. All right, so let's close it one more time. Let's open PowerShell. Okay, and now let's go ahead and again get the environment variables. Let's hit run, and now you can see we have the Bing URL available. All right, so this is how you can actually persist the value of the environment variable. I hope the simple example helped you to understand the difference between the local variable and environment variable and how to work with the environment variable in PowerShell. I thank you for watching the video.